Hey, Jer, have you ever had like a particular musician that you've only heard one song from because it came up like randomly or whatever, and you just were always too afraid to listen to more of their music in case it wasn't as good as that one song that you really liked?
Have you ever heard a song called Stacy's Mom?
The title sounds familiar, surprising enough.
So, what you need to know about Stacy's mom is that she's got it going on.
Mm-hmm.
Stacy,
Total,
can't you see you're not the girl for me?
it's your mom.
Yeah. That song is catchy as fuck. And so I actually did Fountains of Wayne. Thank you, Rich. Hey, Rich. Let's see. I actually did go in and say, what else did this band make?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of nothing. An unfortunate, overflowing well, fountain, if you will, of disappointingly nothing. Like, just nothing interesting, or not bad. It's just, they just produced tons and tons and tons of 5 out of 10 songs. Just not bad, but not good, and just not memorable. And meanwhile, Stacy's mom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, kinda.
So, I had an incident where that turned out well for once, in the vein of Astronautalis, who is a rap musician. I have a very interesting relationship with rap. I didn't really take it seriously for a long time. I used to sort of joke that I like a bit of everything except rap and country.
Yeah.
And when I did think I found country, everyone else told me it was also folk, like everything I did like. Um, anyways, I listened to a lot of Dessa, and then through Dessa, I started listening to Doomtree, and then just through autoplay, I ended up listening to a lot of Astronautalis, who's a contemporary of them. This has done a lot of collabs and whatnot, and I really only heard one song from them, which is "The River of the Woods." It was used in Nightville once. Really good song, but I was just kind of like, I bet the rest isn't for me, and I was wrong. There's a lot of good music that Astronautalis has done. And it gets me to kind of crystallize more of what I like in particular rap, and that is, like, it allows for a very strong command of language, because with pretty much all rap, the lyrics are always the star.
Yeah.
I like folk for a lot of reasons. A lot of good folk also, like, the lyrics get time to shine, but there's also some instruments that go into that. And rap, it is, like, no matter what the rest of the song is,
You better you better be bringing some poetry.
Yeah. And that's why I don't like a lot of pop rap, because it doesn't.
Agree strongly. Pop rap very much has the aesthetic, and like it sounds like it, and it uses the same vocabulary, but it's not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
But the best rap is saying some deep shit.
Mm-hmm. Astronautalis's command of the English language is really cool.
I appreciate this.
And this kind of goes into something I might have talked about on stream before, which is how, like, my own self-consciousness with my own writing. Like, for a long time, a lot of my life has been spent worried I'll turn into Hemingway in a lot of ways.
You're doing a good job of not.
Yeah, this is including my prose. And Hemingway, if you've read any of him, he's got very terse, very to the point prose, very simple sentences, very, like, is telling the events as they happen. And there's something to be said for that. He is very effective at telling the story, and even using simple sentences, like getting emotions across. Like, I actually have some pretty profound respect for that. But it's not what I wanted to do. I like flowery language. I like poetry. I just didn't really think I was capable of it. And for the record, I think maybe that used to be the case. But I actually spent a whole lot of time not writing prose. After, like, so I went through college, I was prose, writing novels, that's what I want to do, blah, blah, blah. And then I took this, like, 6-year hiatus where I did nothing but draw comics. And then I picked up Anachronistic after spending 6 years not writing prose, only drawing comics, and listening to a shit ton of really lyrical music. And I'm not worried about that anymore. All this is to say, again, writing Anachronistic scripts, I was looking at the most recent one, I'm like, oh, did I go too poetic here? At the same time, I'm kind of proud of it. So there's a bit in 11 that's gonna be kind of like me doing a poem, I think, and we'll see if it lands. I hope it does.
I'm pretty sure it will. Based on the arc of the trajectory of Anachronistic, that feels like the time for a poem.
That's fair. That's kind of what I was thinking too. I was like, I have the question of like, is this too much? And the answer I came with too. It's either too much and bad or perfect, and I think I'm gonna just hope it's perfect. Anyways, that's been a big thing on my mind all day. I really would say, like, so I've written poetry before, but like there's a chunk that I kind of consider like my first poem in years. Like I think I could take it out of context, make it a little more self-sustaining out of the scene, and yeah, I'm kind of interested in that, and I'm interested to see what you guys think of it.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's probably gonna be really good.
Oh, that's the wrong layer. Squirrel Horde is excited for it. Love me some poetry.
I can respect poetry. There's something there.
It took me a while and some people being very patient and really driving through my head what's cool about poetry before I got poetry. And yeah, no, there's some stuff I think I can accomplish if I can get better at poetry. Now, like, poetry as a standalone medium is something that's kind of interesting because it's very hard to market a chapbook of poetry. There's not a lot of money there, and that's like kind of unfortunate. But using the same like using the lessons poetry teaches for other work, I think that there's something to be said there. Shiny Zubat says, I think the only poetry I've ever clicked with is Poe. Schoolheart says poetry is just prose, but with restrictions, and the working within those restrictions is what's fun to me. Shiny Zubat says, just a very basic bitch over here. What were you saying, Jer?
Yeah, that, like, I pretty much generally, I've again, like, that's another thing that I've definitely, like, gone on about here on this stream is, like, how I feel about poetry, and that's basically it, and that, like, I respect it. I respect the restrictions of it, the challenge of it. I think, like, taking an idea and forcing it into that particular type of pattern, whatever poetic pattern you choose, whatever poetic structure you choose, forcing it into those restrictions helps. It is one way to distill an idea and refine it into a finished thing. And then from that point, you can go other places, like, for example, music. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Code, again, for getting Stacy's mom stuck in your head.
In my case, I once in college got caught shit-talking poetry in front of a contemporary of mine who was a really good poet, I should add. And they essentially forced me down to watch some slam poetry. And that's what, like, finally got clicked to me. Slam poetry is essentially performed poetry. And it was at that point that the cadence of the words, like, I kind of understood how to read poetry from hearing it spoken, but I also just sort of, like, I got it. It was a way to, like, through the emotions of the person reading, it helped instill in me, like ideas and empathy in what they were talking about, even though it didn't reach me before.
Right.
And that was really cool. I think poetry is a very underexposed medium in our world right now, and that's kind of a shame.
Well, I think part of it is it's not as easy to consume as all of the other media options. I don't think there's anything wrong with poetry, but when it's up against television and music and video games, it kind of becomes a piece of those things more than its own thing.
I would argue in this case that yes, it's not as easy to consume, but in poetry's case, that's more of a, I'd say, marketing problem.
Yeah.
An observed problem than a, like, because like reading a novel, that's work. That's sitting down with your brain engaged for several hours, absorbing words, which is also frankly tiring on the eyes sometimes, depending on how shitty your eyes are. In my case, very. Poetry is short and snappy and easy to read, but like the prospect of it is a lot more difficult just because we're sort of taught that it is. We're sort of taught to be a little afraid of poetry, and so it isn't as easily accessible, both like psychologically or logistically.
I think something you said a little bit earlier really got me, and it was along the lines of like, it's harder to sell it as a product, and so it's like, you can buy an album, you can buy a video game, you can buy a comic book, you can buy a ticket to see a movie, or you can pirate it off of the internet, like a person downloads a car.
Well,
but a poem is so it's not like what you said it earlier, which is that like it's not as easy to product it, and thus it's harder to make a living out of it, which means it's harder to just be like a full-time poet. Definitely you can. Go ahead.
There is a product for it, and that's they're I believe colloquially referred to as chapbooks. It's just not a lot of people buy them.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of exposure for it. And they don't make money.
Right.
The product is there. I think it's more society's relationship to poetry that isn't where it should be right now. I don't think the problem is necessarily with the medium itself in this case.
It's I feel it's a large amount of what it's up against, and what else there is to do and see and consume. It's like if there was only poetry, we'd all be reading poetry because there's so much of it and it's the main thing. I'm playing Elden Ring because I have Elden Ring.
Elden Ring.
It's like if I had a poem on my desk and, my Xbox controller right here, and I'd be like, I could read a poem, but Elden Ring. It's just... It's right there. It's a video game. It's right here. But, I don't think it's poetry's fault.